We're now live.
Thank you very much. So, good morning members, officers and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of the South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee on Wednesday the 15th of January 2025. My name is Councillor Anna Bradnam and I'm the chair of this committee. And I'm just going to go round the table and ask you to introduce yourselves one after the other. So we'll start off with Councillor Peter Fane.
Morning, Peter Fane. I'm Vice Chair of the committee and I'm one of the members for Shelford Ward.
Councillor Hawkins.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning. Tumi Hawkins, member for Caldicot Ward.
Councillor Handley.
Good morning. It's Bill Handley, one of the councillors for the villages of Over and Willingham.
Thank you. Councillor Rickson.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks. So Councillor James Rickson for the ward of Histon and Pinton.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Ariel Khan, Councillor for Horsell and Cumberton Ward.
Thank you. And Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Richard Williams. I'm the member for Whittlesford, Triplow, Heathfield and Newton.
Thank you very much. And we're fortunate to have with us the officers. We've got our legal advisor, Vanessa Blaine. We have Rebecca Smith, Melissa Reynolds, and the officers who will introduce themselves when they come to the applications. And then also we're fortunate to have Simon Hill, who is our coordinator for this committee, and Aaron Clark, who ensures the projection of it works properly. So, we also have members of the public who I will introduce at the time of the applications. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you're deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archive recording. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their cameras and microphone remain off unless they're addressing the committee. And a reminder to the members, if you arrive after the start of an application or leave the chamber once an application has commenced, you will not be able to take any further part in that application, either by debate, questions or clarification of the vote. Right, thank you. So, secondly, apologies. Simon, are there any apologies for absence today?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Martin Khan and we have Councillor James Rickson as his substitute. We also have apologies from Councillors Harvey, Redrup and Sanford.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And item 3 is declarations of interest. Do members have any interest to declare in relation to any item of business on the agenda? Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, item 5, which is land north of 39A Whittlesford. I'm obviously the local member for Whittlesford. I'm also the chair of the parish council for Whittlesford, which is objecting, and as such, I'm going to speak as local member and not take part in the debate. I think I've probably had too much to do with this application over the years.
And thank you very much, and I believe you referred it, so that's fine. Thank you very much. And Councillor Bill Handley?
One of the two
Microphone. Oh, you have got a microphone. Okay.
One of the two applications is in the village of Willingham, which is for which I am the councillor. But unless I'm told otherwise, I will take part in the debate. I'm sure the legal officer will tell me if that's not right.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. We just want to confirm that, confirm whether you have or haven't any interest in this. Here with
I've no interest in this whatsoever. I haven't spoken to the parish council and they haven't asked me to comment either.
Thank you. Right. So we move on to item 4, which is the minutes, starting on page 5 of the agenda. I had just a couple of observations. One, I realised I did not refer to Simon Hill beforehand. It's on page 7, or the third, maybe I did. The third paragraph down, where it says Councillor Richard Williams expressed concern that the proposed amended members' planning good practice guide actually went further, etc. That should be CE for the noun rather than the verb. And the second one is on page 9 at the third full paragraph down, where it refers to Councillor Heather Williams asked a question of the applicant, etc. And at the third line of that paragraph, it says, Ms Pearce stated that they had submitted a letter to the council in the previous week setting out why they had taken this view, not sitting out. So those are just some amendments. Does it, the members have any... Councillor Heather Williams has just arrived. Are you joining us today as an observer? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Councillor Heather Williams, the Mordens Ward.
Thank you very much. Good. Excellent. Oh, do you have any declarations of interest?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so moving on then, can we agree to sign those minutes as a true record with those amendments?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'll do those after the meeting. Thank you. So, we now come on to the substantive planning applications, and I'll clarify the process for considering each planning application. So it works like this. The case officer will give a brief introduction to the report. The committee may then ask questions of clarification of the case officer. Then the registered public speakers will be invited to speak for 3 minutes each, and members then may ask them questions of clarification. And then the committee will debate the item, but public speakers are not permitted to take part in the debate. At the end of the debate and conclusion of any questions, providing there is no alternative proposal, the officer recommendation will be read out, and I will request a proposer and seconder for the recommendation. I will ask members to vote on the recommendation, and then if a recommendation either for approval or refusal falls, an alternative proposal must be made, which will require a seconder and must then be voted on. And the voting will all be recorded. So, if we get confused at any point, we can refer back to that part 5 in my notes. Okay, so land north of item 5, agenda item 5, is 24/03672 S73, which is land north of 39A Station Road West in Whittlesford. And this application is for a variation of conditions to remove the basement element, this is basement parking, and reconfigure the site plan to accommodate the car parking spaces formerly located in the basement, previously approved under application 01150 FUL. And our officer, Katie Christodoulides, the Principal Planner West, will present the report. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the application is for land north of 39A Station Road West in Whittlesford. It's a Section 73 application to vary Condition 2 of the approved plans of the original application, which was for the demolition of existing buildings, creation of access road from Station Road West, and construction of residential development, including semi-detached terrace houses and blocks of flats, totalling 48 residential units, with associated landscaping, car and cycle parking and refuge storage. And the condition 2, the approved plans, seeks to vary it, so it seeks to remove the basement element and reconfigure the site plan to accommodate the car parking spaces which were formerly located in the basement. Members might remember that this application was brought to Planning Committee in July 2023, in which it was approved. So the site lies within the Whittlesford Village framework and in flood zone 1, which is low risk. It's a brownfield site of 1.27 hectares and it's currently vacant and was previously in use as a scrapyard. To the north and west of the site lies agricultural land. This is the Cambridge Greenbelt as well. The railway line from Cambridge to London runs to the east, and then you've got further commercial development beyond, and then to the south of the site lies residential development, and then you've got Whittlesford Parkway Station. So some existing site photographs, you can see the site from above here. These three demonstrate and can show what the site looks like at the moment, and then this is the residential dwelling at 39A, which will be demolished. So the section 73 seeks to vary the approved plans to remove the basement car park element and reconfigure the site plan to accommodate the car parking spaces formerly within that basement. There's no change to the number of dwellings or apartments, the height, the form or the mass of the buildings. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the approved plan, which was approved under the original application. On the approved site plan, the red arrow here highlights the access road into the basement car park, which is under the apartments B and C. On the right-hand side, you can see the proposed site plan for this application, in which you'll note the yellow arrow shows the removal of the underground basement car park and the access road, and the replacement with kind of hard and soft landscaping here for car and cycle parking. So we've got the approved parking plan and the proposed parking plan. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the approved parking plan, which is under the original application. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the proposed parking plan, in which I've marked with yellow arrows where the car parking is being dispersed on the site from the basement, underground basement car park. And then again, we've got the approved basement car parking plan. So on the left here is the original site plan for the application, and then you'll see here the basement car parking plan, which was under B and C. So the main planning consideration, so the principle of residential development for 48 dwellings was established under the original application, which was recently granted. The affordable housing community sum was through the Section 106 agreement. The design is high quality design that positively responds to the character and the surrounding areas. High risk safety, the provision of safe access in accordance with policy. Neighbour amenity is acceptable in regards to the relationship with neighbours. Biodiversity on-site B&G provision provided, and then trees and landscaping, there's a positive impact in terms of landscaping the visual amenity of the area. There's no objections from urban design, landscape, county highways or transport assessment team. And in terms of planning recommendation, so it's a recommendation of approval subject to the conditions and the legal agreement, which was dated 26th of April 2024 under the original application. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Christodoulidis. Members, do you have any questions of clarification for the case officer? So, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Why is the parking being removed from underground? I'm not sure I actually saw that reason in the documentation. Sorry,
You're
just
asking
wanted to know why it's being brought from underground to overground.
So that would be one for the applicant to answer. They're putting forward why this application is coming forward.
So if you want to ask that question when we have the applicant speaking. Councillor Dr Heather Williams. Sorry, no, Councillor Heather Williams.
It's very nice for you to give me doctorate. I don't think I'd have quite earned the privilege. Two was throwing one at me. Thank you very much. I've lost track of what I was thinking now, Chair. Well done. It was there's tilted, not tilted, the scales, I know. Can you tell what's on my mind? The scales, that was up very quickly and then it was down. So if we could just have that back, because I think I was trying to read the right-hand side and then I didn't quite get to the end of it. It was the last, there we go. So we've got visual impact of increased car parking on the site, but there is quite a big difference in the amount of parking. So I'm just wondering, is it just the visual impact that you're suggesting, or actually can we look at the potential highways issues? That doesn't seem to be on the reasons for refusal, but it's something that I am not wanting to predict the debate, but I imagine is something that we're going to be reflecting on. And it just doesn't seem to fit in those scales. I'm just wondering why.
So in terms of highways, there's no objections from the local highway authority. There's no impact on highway safety in regards to this. So in terms of considerations, it would be just looking at the visual impact of the increased car parking on the site.
Even though it's a departure from our policy.
Yeah,
So I will come to Councillor Khan.
it's a departure because it's because it's outside. No, it's not outside the framework.
Is it a departure in terms of numbers?
Yeah, in terms of that.
So it is against our policy. It's a departure from policy in relation to parking, I believe.
No, in relation to the size of the development and the village scale.
Right, okay. So I thought when you said size, I thought you meant the parking.
So I will come to Councillor Khan because my question is related to the same thing. I did a quick sort of tot up of the numbers and I think you said in the report, I think the underground parking made provision for 40 spaces plus 5 disabled spaces plus 32 cycle spaces. And then the overground car parking had dropped to 31, is that right? Was there a reduction in the number of parking spaces when it came onto the surface? Or, forgive me, I might have mislaid it in your report.
Yes, so there's 77 spaces in total on site, 37 surface spaces, and then 40 spaces for the dwellings, which will be 20 within the driveways and 20 within the garages. So there is a reduction compared to the original application.
So if it's 77 under this plan, what was it under the previous plan?
So there's a reduction of 17 car parking spaces from the previous application, yeah.
Okay. So does that still provide for the policy required number of parking spaces per dwelling of the different types?
So it's under 10.52 of the report.
Thank you.
So there is a reduction, but we consider it to be acceptable in regards to parking standards.
Okay. Let me just find it. 10.52. So, okay, so that's right. 20 dwellings had 2 car parking spaces per dwelling and 37 spaces represented for the apartments had 1.3 spaces per unit, and that's policy compliant, is it?
Yeah, we're happy with in regards to guidance, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor,
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, there is a difference. I appreciate officers are happy with it, but what is the number that our policy requires a site to deliver on parking? Because I appreciate your response, and you've made in the report that you're happy with the number, but what number of parking provision does policy say we should have? So then we have the comparisons,
thank
please,
you.
Chair.
That's fine. Yeah.
Mine's not working. We don't actually have a policy on parking standards, we have guidance. Bear with. So there are indicative standards in the local plan. I just need to get to the figure and then I can share it on my screen. If you just give me a second. Sorry, my system's slow in here.
Shall I come, just, well, just one moment, because Councillor Ariel Khan was before you. I will come to you, Councillor Handley. Yeah. Shall I let another question come through?
I can either share it on my screen or I can read it out. So
Okay.
the
Okay,
indicative parking provision is 2 spaces per dwelling, 1 to be allocated within the curtilage. But it's only indicative.
And what about in apartments?
That's the same.
2 spaces per dwelling. So 1.3 is below that.
For the apartments, yes.
2. Okay, right. Thank you. I'm going to come. I've got questions from Councillor Ariel Khan and then Councillor Handley. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit confused about some of the approval considerations. Are we considering all the approval considerations for the application both before and after, and not just the amendment to the application?
No, we're looking at the approval. Sorry, we're looking at the application as in front of us. The conditions have been brought forward from the previous application. Rebecca, did you want to clarify that?
So this is a Section 73 application. So we're looking at whether or not the amendments that are made to the application are acceptable or not. The principle has already been established. So that's why Katie's gone through the presentation essentially on the differences. So we're looking at the removal of the basement car parking and the relocation of the parking and the amendments that's made to the layout of the ground floor.
Right, that's why I'm confused, because to me it feels like a number of the approval considerations aren't specific to the amendment, but to the application we've already approved before. So I'm confused whether that's appropriate to put in as an approval.
Maybe it would be helpful, Councillor Khan, if so the principle of development of this quantum has already been established in April 2024, and that included at the time provision of underground parking. The amendment that's being requested is to remove that underground parking and put it on the surface. So that is going to affect the landscaping, the provision of parking and the layout of the site. So if there was a particular thing you were concerned about.
Yes, so those will be the refusal considerations.
I'm sorry, say again?
So those would be the considerations of landscape impact and increased visual impact in the parking. But so the consideration, for example, for the provision of 48 dwellings, that's not specifically relevant to this amendment, it's relevant to the application as a whole. The previously approved application.
So, Councillor Khan, I'm going to ask Rebecca Smith to come in.
A Section 73 application grants a whole new planning permission, but with a variation to conditions. So it is essentially, it is a new planning permission, but it's tied back to the same time limit. In this instance, 90% of the conditions are the same. It's a variation of condition 2, but it is granting a new planning permission. So therefore, the considerations that we looked at as material considerations last time are still material considerations, although we're looking at whether or not the changes to the scheme basically are acceptable, but it is a whole new planning permission.
Thank you, I understand.
That
has answered my question, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Bill Handley.
Thank you. My question is simple. Is the parish council speaking today?
Let me just see. Yes,
because I do have a question on their comments.
Okay, so you can
so
raise that.
That's fine. If they're speaking, I'll leave it until then. Yep. The other thing, can I just make a point that a lot of no comments received, brackets out of time as we go through this. Now, that might be totally normal, but I haven't come across it before. I just wonder why, and are there any consequences of that?
I can only see three. So those comments, 6.3 access, 6.4 air quality, and 6.28 health development.
There are 5.
Are there some more? Okay. Oh, right, 6.25 Environment Agency. So, Ms Christodoulis,
So
do you want to
we
take
didn't
that?
receive any comments from those consultees, and that was following the consultation period ending, and we haven't received any comments.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check, so I'm looking at our local plan, policy TI or T1, I'm not sure, I think it's letters, TI/3, which is parking provision. And it does say about a minimum level of car parking for people with impairment mobilities. So I'm just wondering what the calculation of that is, so that when we're looking at this number of houses, what proportion of it is the minimum that is required for our planning policy in relation to this. If we could have that calculation, please, Chair.
Okay, let's ask Ms Christodoulis, please.
Yes, there'll be 5 accessible spaces for the apartment buildings.
I think the question was about the calculation.
Sorry, what was that again? Sorry, can you confirm?
So the question is about the calculation in our parking provision policy. It says there's a minimum level. So just wondering, yes, I know they're providing 5, but is that compliant? Is that, over providing, under providing?
Okay, let's ask the officer.
So it meets the policy, it meets the requirement.
Good, okay, so that's helpful.
I see no others.
Okay, right.
Sorry.
Oh, Councillor Rickson, yes?
Apologies, it's a quick question. I think you stated that because it's a section 76 application.
73.
73, sorry, apologies. And that constitutes as a new planning application. Does that mean the biodiversity net gain, is that considered in this application now? If it was previously made outside of those requirements from last year, is that right?
So, Ms Christodoulis,
So that hasn't been reassessed because it was on the original application, and it meets the policy in accordance with that, so it will remain the same as the previous application.
But follow-up question, if that means that we've got a lot more car parking on the surface than there was before when the calculation of the biodiversity net gain was done, how does that work for the new application?
So condition 11 on the conditions requires biodiversity net gain plan to be submitted.
Sorry, it requires what? A biodiversity net gain plan to demonstrate improvement, does it? So if that's found to be less than satisfactory, that would, I mean, it's just saying, if you've then taken up a lot of what was going to be green space with car parking, how does that work?
If I can jump in on that one. So condition 11 refers to net gain, and if you look at the details of what needs to be supplied to discharge that condition, it includes using the latest DEFRA metrics. So they will need to submit a plan which covers all of these various different elements, including monitoring, and it needs to be in accordance with the latest DEFRA guidance as well. And so those details will be submitted at a later stage, and then they'll be assessed whether or not they're acceptable and meet the requirements at that stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Just looking at our local plan on page 233, it says about the indicative for car parking. It also gives an indicative for cycle parking of 1 space per bedroom. Does the cycle provision, I appreciate there's no change, but obviously there is a change to parking. So is the cycle provision of 1 space per bedroom compliant with that?
Yes, it is, and there's no change. It's the same as before, but they're also providing 6 additional spaces on top of what's there. So it's compliant with policy, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much, Ms Christodoulis, for responding to those requests for clarification. So we'll come to our registered speaker. Oh, sorry. This is just the standard fire alarm. Don't panic. Thank you. The lights will carry on flashing. That is normal. Thank you. Right, so we come to our registered public speakers who are invited to speak for 3 minutes each, and members can, after they've given their presentation, members can ask them questions of clarification. So the first we have is Lorenzo Pandolfi, who's from Logic Planning, who's agent for the applicant. Do come forward and give us your presentation. Thank you. So, you okay for 3 minutes? Lovely, thank you very much. You'll be timed and we'll give you a warning close to the time. Okay, thank you.
Questions will be answered with my presentation, but of course I'm happy to take more after. The applicant is asking permission to amend the project approved in 2023. As the officers say, the number of residential units and the principal development will remain the same. We are changing the car parking essentially because of costs, but also because upon review we discovered that moving all that soil to excavate the basement would have dislocated thousands of cubic meters of what is essentially polluted soil. So taking the two together, we tried to resolve the issue of costs and also reduce the risk of pollution and traffic, of course, by moving the car parking on the ground floor. The officers are supporting the applications. The conditions are pretty strong, and the financial contribution and affordable housing mechanisms are exactly the same. So affordable housing is covered and will continue to be covered by the Section 106. The new car parking area is proposed between the apartment blocks and will be screened from views thanks to a green podium and very thick trees and shrubs. This is conditioned and can be followed up with more details. There will be an open area above the podium of the car parking space for the residents, which will be actually bigger than the previously approved and more usable. So communal area will increase. The number of cycle parking will actually increase by 6, and there will be car parking spaces on the side of the apartment blocks, again with edges and trees to screen. There will be new trees compared to the previously approved scheme in the central green area, and also the landscaping strategy has been improved to follow the consultation with your officers, with the landscape officer in particular. The landscape strategy you have in front of you is more detailed than the one that was approved in 2023, and the biodiversity in that game will be achieved. There is also condition number 5, which is about landscaping maintenance and management plan, which of course we will follow, making sure that it sets out the long-term management responsibilities and maintenance duties for all the landscaped areas. One point on affordable housing and generally the costs of the scheme. The cost of the basement was not in the original viability assessment, and that means that essentially it was taken into consideration by the applicant now, but it wasn't in the calculations of the viability. So the viability is exactly the same. The viability argument is exactly the same, and the mechanisms to ensure that affordable housing is captured remains the same. So this is what I wanted to say to answer some of your questions, especially about car parking numbers. There will be a reduction in car parking numbers.
Are you drawing to a close, Mr.
Yes, yes. Just one point on car parking numbers. There will
just
be
one point.
Yes, the reduction is backed up by data from the local census-based projections, which actually tell us that the projection of car parking ownership is below the number of parking spaces we're giving. So,
okay,
and the MPPF supports this.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Pandolfi. Okay. Stay there, yes, because we might have questions for you from the members. So, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you for your presentation. If I heard you correctly, you stated that the cost of the underground parking wasn't taken into account in the original assessment. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. It wasn't there and is not there here now. So, but the Section 160 has a mechanism that ensures that if the viability of the scheme improves, that will be captured. There is already an affordable housing contribution, financial one, but also a mechanism that ensures that any improvement in the viability will be captured back by the council. And that hasn't changed and it remains valid, essentially, and will bite the scheme if it improves in the future.
Thank you very much. Okay, and Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair, I mean, these applications are always by choice. You want to make changes for viability reasons. Why not remove one plot and then you would have all the parking provision and probably have the support of the local community? So what engagement have you done? And I appreciate you've given some general statistics, but what actual analysis of parking in that location have you done?
Well, we've done, we worked with the local parish council for years, and we know and we appreciate that parking pressure, traffic is a huge issue in the area around the station. What we've done is consult with one of the best transport consultants. We've done local, of course, we did local surveys. We checked the data, we checked the NPPF, and we triangulated the data we had with the reality of the site, which allows us to provide a certain amount of car parking. But what we didn't want to do, of course, is to concrete over the whole site or remove houses in favor of car parking. So we found a balance, which is backed by data, and we think is completely in line with the MPPF at the moment. The other thing I would like to say is that one of the things that came up when we discussed the scheme, and the previous scheme especially with the locals, is the fear that people living in this new neighborhood will park outside of it. We don't want that. We're suggesting, and we can certainly put bollards with fobs at the entrance, so there will be no risk, physical risk of overspilling in the surrounding area. And as your officers say, the houses which tend to have higher car parking ownership have 2 car parking spaces each. The flats, which are of course targeted to younger members of the population, small families or single households, tend to have lesser need for car parking, and in fact they still have, but is less. And of course we're next to a station, so I think on balance we find that we did our best to give car parking to the bigger houses and the families, and still have a nice and walkable neighbor with a central green space.
Do you want to come back, Councillor
Yes,
Williams?
please. Just want to clarify something you said. So you've done your best to give more car parking provision to the bigger market housing. On that basis, what is there, on your calculations, you said you've got data and what have you, so if you're giving priority to the big houses, what's left for the small houses and the flats?
No, all the houses have the same, two units. The flats have 1.3 space. The flats have 1.3 spaces per unit, and the data that we are used is a census-based prediction, and it says that the prediction is that there will be a need for 69 car parking spaces in the area for this mix of units. Of course, the area is dominated by larger family houses, so to a degree it's skewed in their favor, but still, even with that, the projection says that there is a need of 69, and we're providing 77, and we think is on balance is more than enough. Again, taking into consideration that the flats will be lived and used mainly by smaller households, and the fact that there is a station less than 5 minutes away.
Chair, could I ask officers, because it could be in the report and I've just completely forgotten about it, but actually the breakdown of the bedrooms, how many 4 beds, how many 3 beds on that site, because I think, especially given what's been referred to in the answer there about big houses getting more parking, etc., the breakdown, or if it's in the report, if you could just direct me to it, that'd be great.
Certainly, while they're looking for that, my observation was that when we queried that, we were told that the parking was compliant with policy, weren't we? So, yeah, we can.
No, Chair, we were told there isn't a policy and that officers were happy with it. There's quite a big difference of it being policy
It followed
compliant.
the guidance. It was
No, it doesn't follow the guidance. Our indicative figures, it is not meet that, but officers are happy with it. That's what we've been told.
Yes. Okay, fair point. So, can you give us some information?
Yeah, so 26 one or two bed homes, 14 3 beds, and then 8 4 beds. Yeah, so 26 1 or 2 beds, 14 3 beds, and then 8 4 beds.
So, in the report, it said that 20 dwellings would have 2 car spaces per dwelling. Somewhere. Just bear with me. Here we are at 10.52 that you referred me to before. 20 of the dwellings, so presumably that's the 4 and 3 beds, plus a bit, will have 2 car park spaces per dwelling. And it says 37 spaces for the 28 apartments, but we've got, that doesn't work out, does it?
Just to clarify that the dwellings aren't, I'll try and get my words out correctly. So the dwellings have 2 parking spaces each. You can't assume that they're all the 3 and 4 beds. So the dwellings have 2 parking spaces each. The apartments have, on average, I think the average is 1.3 spaces per unit. The bedroom sizes are spread across the dwellings and the flats.
Could we have a breakdown of house and flat, please? So we know how many of the 3 beds are flats and how many of the 2 beds. We haven't even got a breakdown between 1 and 2 beds.
No, that was because that was all done under the previous application. So we'll need, if we can have 5 minutes to work that out, Chair, please.
Meanwhile, I've got some questions for the applicant. So you advised us that when you explored the possibility of digging out the space for the car park, you realised there was a lot of contamination on site, and it was you chose not to do that. So presumably that means that the ground in question is contaminated, and therefore we've got conditions there to ensure that you're going to remediate as necessary. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
It's absolutely correct. We always knew that this is a very contaminated.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, we always knew that it's a very contaminated site, and the choice we had in front of us, of course, is to crack on with all the application. One issue was viability, but the other thing is, of course, excavating and disposal of all this soil and transporting it out of the site with dust, noise, etc. So we took the view that it's a better and smarter and also more sustainable choice to avoid the excavation as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. Just one moment. Got a couple more questions and we'll come back to the answer on the car parking. So the podium area for residents, is it anticipated that the residents will pay for the maintenance of that
Yes, it would.
area?
Yes, it will be part of the general management of the whole site. Actually, we anticipated it would be a single entity managing the communal spaces and what we call public spaces, the green in the middle. But yes, it's all part of normal,
Yes, okay.
Residential costs for.
Okay, and can we ensure that the residents have a say on that body, on that management committee?
Yes, I mean, it's I cannot answer for things that are strictly outside of the planning realm, but I'm pretty sure that it would be in the interest of the management company to make their residents happy. And again, we're talking about a pretty standard, well, high quality, but standard landscaping, which hopefully it would be low maintenance and would be low cost as well. But that's certainly what the applicant wants to do.
Yes, and I'm just seeking legal advice that could be put in perhaps as an informative, if necessary.
Because there's no...
Well, I don't know if the management company's been informed previously.
No, it would be that if one was created, that the residents should be given an opportunity to. Okay, right. So do you want to go back to your answer on the numbers? Thank you. Mr. Lorenzo, Mr. Pandolfi, could you turn your microphone off for the moment? Thank
Sure.
you. Do you want to come back with your numbers then?
They're on the screen. They're on the screen now, Chair. Along with the 2021 census data on parking demand by breakdown by unit size as well.
So could you just talk us through that? Just guide us around the table.
Yeah, so for the apartments, there are 4 1-beds, 22 2-beds and 2 3-beds. And for the houses, there are 12 3-beds and 8 4-beds. And then you can see there the 2011 and 2021 predicted parking demand in regards to the census data.
So on the apartments, the predicted need is 34 and the provision is 28. Is that right?
No, I think it's,
And
if you look at paragraph 10.52, there's 37 spaces for the 28 proposed apartments.
Okay, so 37 being more than 34 is sufficient. And then for the houses, the expected demand is 36 and the provision is
40.
40. So that does provide for what is anticipated to be needed. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Williams. Okay, righto, but that seems to make sense to me, but if you want to come back at any point, then do. Right, so did you have a further question for, yes, so Councillor Dr. Timmy Hawkins with a further question for the agent.
Sorry, Chair, probably not for the speaker, but only because he mentioned that there was a way to claw back some funds if the viability proved that there was more available. Is that, I just wanted to confirm that we have that. Is it written in the condition? Because I've just scanned through and I couldn't find anything.
It's detailed in the Section 106 agreement, which will still stand for this application.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Handley, do you have a question for Mr. Pandolfi?
Yes, I'd like to ask the developer, please, to comment on Whittleford Parish Council's comment. And this is the second comment in their objection, and that is that the initial proposal used...
Sorry, Councillor Handley, can you talk towards your microphone a bit more, please? Just because it's hard to hear you.
I can hear myself.
Thank you.
The initial proposal used higher cost of the underground car park to justify a lower number of social houses in the development. And they say that it hasn't changed and that they should be able to expect a much higher allowance now of social houses because of the loss of the expense of the underground car parking.
Thank you for the question. As the report says, the original viability study did not include the cost of the car parking, and this has been confirmed by an independent third-party financial viability advisor that the council has, of course, contacted, and so essentially the cost of the car parking wasn't there in the first place, is not there now. If if you were there in the first application, the viability would have been even worse. So we're now saying, and this is confirmed by public documents and confirmed by your own viability consultant, that the costs of the car parking do not have an impact on the viability mechanism that we already have in place for affordable housing. So affordable housing contributions are already enshrined in the Section 106, which is still valid and will continue to bite if and when the viability of the scheme improves. So nothing has changed in reality on that particular aspect.
Thank you. And I think it might be helpful if Rebecca could just clarify the planning point about the S106, the viability, if you wish to.
Sorry, Chair, what exactly point did you want me to clarify?
The question was, broadly speaking, if the car park wasn't included in the first viability assessment, what is the implication of that for the new viability assessment? In other words, is it likely to be greater or less?
As I say, unfortunately, we can't go back and look at the previous application. So the current viability assessment has been assessed by independent viability consultant, and the responses such as detailed within the report that the scheme is still in deficit as such, and that the contribution, the commuted sum contributions and the other contributions proposed are still viable for this scheme, and that's why the recommendation is that the planning permission links back to the previous Section 106 that's already been signed, and it's still relevant for this scheme. In terms of the previous application, that's been and gone. There's nothing I can really do about that at this stage. I guess the only comment I could make was that if the underground basement works had been included in the previous viability report, that would have had a further impact on the viability of the scheme and the contributions that could be afforded.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Just one further point, and that is, it's obvious that the the parking in Whittlesford Station Road is extremely pressurised by people using all sorts of local facilities, including Whittlesford Parkway Station. You mentioned in your presentation that you were concerned that some of the people might try to park in here as opposed to anywhere else. In other words, non-residents might try to park in the development. But had you taken account at all of residents who might seek to park off the site?
Well, absolutely, it goes both ways, I think, and that's why we think we should, we want to make that physically impossible with bollards or other systems that can be conditioned, and I think is the best way to prevent trespassing on one way and prevent future residents to increase the pressure on the area. It's a mechanical thing and can be fixed pretty easily. So we will certainly welcome a condition covering that. I think actually the design already has provisions for that, but we don't want neither of the scenarios you have outlined. So parking on our side or our resident parking next door.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering where the condition is. Just bear with me. I can't see a condition around car parking. Is there one? We've got cycle parking. We've got future management and maintenance of proposed streets at 20. Is that the one we're looking at? Or is it cycle parking details? Sorry, I'm asking officers, is there any condition around car parking?
What would the condition be in regards? What are you looking for?
It's sort of like, is there going to be a parking management plan or something? Because there's the problem of people trying to park in the development who are not resident, and also residents parking elsewhere, not here, if they've got more than one car and they've only got one parking space, you know, will that end up with being a problem on Station Road, adding to the problem on Station Road? Are we... Yeah.
We can only control something within the red
Within the
line.
site, yeah, okay.
So if members were minded to, that this was a concern outside of, in addition to the conditions that were already in the report, a condition about a car park management plan could be added. It wasn't on the original permission, but if the concern is that because of the reduction in parking spaces, I think that could be reasonable to add a car park management plan.
I think that might be a good thing, because we know that car parking in Whittlesford has always been a problem, and it continues, and it's difficult for everybody to manage. So if we can put some kind of condition on a parking management plan, that
would only affect parking on the site. It wouldn't generally deal with parking issues in Whittlesford as such.
No,
it would,
but it would control what the residents could do within the site. I don't know, it might not help, but I'm just trying to think, what can we do to help the residents of Whittlesford? It might not, I can see Councillor Hawkins feeling that that's not perhaps fair.
And just another suggestion, if it's a concern about people who don't live on the site, parking within the site, then you could deal with something in terms of access into the site under the boundary treatment condition, but I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to do.
Well, that's sort of part of it. I don't know if members feel that would be useful. Councillor Hawkins, did you want to speak?
Sorry, before we sort of go into details about what conditions and all that, can we hear from the other speakers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just before we start, Councillor Heather Williams.
I assure you, my question is of the applicant, Councillor Hawkins. Two things. One of which, in our report, it says that you're relying on integral garage spaces. Cars are naturally getting bigger. So what standards are you going to meet for your spacious garage if that wasn't being relied on before? So what standards will the garages be? And just on this issue, you said that you would look at putting sort of access key fobs, and that would resolve the problem both ways. That would resolve people that don't live there parking inside, but how in your assessment do you believe that would help the new residents that live in these houses not parking on Station Road? You said it would work both ways. I'm struggling with that, so if you could clarify what you meant by that, that would be appreciated.
Sure. The first point, the garages are exactly the same as the approved ones, and they are up to standards. So we're not changing the size or the maneuverability, etc. On the second point, there is always a risk somebody parking elsewhere, and that's not strictly a planning matter; it's more a highway enforcement matter. But what we're trying to do is to minimize the risk with that through the provision of up to standard car parking for the bigger houses, and generally car parking on site that exceeds the census projection. So. I mean, I cannot vouch for future residents. They will never try to park elsewhere, but this is not something I'm afraid I think we can do in terms of planning.
Thank you. And also, we've been reminded that we can't do anything about outside the red line of this site. So, thank you very much, Mr. Pandolfi.
Thank you.
And we'll come now to Philip James from Whittlesford Parish Council. Thank you for being patient, Mr. James. Are you there? Yes, you are.
Yep.
I can see you. Lovely. Okay, so Mr. James, just to remind you, you've got 3 minutes to make your presentation, and then members may ask you some questions. Do go ahead, Mr. James.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm the Vice Chair.
Sorry, before you start, thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Can you just confirm that you're speaking with the authorisation of your parish council to speak on this matter?
Yes, I can confirm that. We had a parish council meeting last night and it will be in the minutes.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Do go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Vice Chair of Whittlesford Parish Council. We considered the proposal, and the Parish Council objects on the grounds of lack of parking facilities and inadequate affordable housing. we believe that using census data for justifying the number of parking spaces it isn't going to be a true reflection of the actual car ownership that's likely to be with the residents on the site. Census data is by its nature an average, and we think that the car ownership on a site of this nature with this type of housing is likely to be higher than the average. We're also concerned that a significant number of the spaces are garages, and I think we all know that a lot of garages are not used for parking cars, irrespective of the size of them. They tend to be used for other things. On the question of affordable housing, we understood when the initial application went through that we were told that the high cost of an underground car park meant that there couldn't be any affordable housing on an affordability basis, of the viability basis for the development. Now that that underground car park has been removed, that surely must change that calculation, and affordable housing allowance should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. James. Do any members have any questions for Mr. James? Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, and through yourself, Chair. I note what you said in relation to what you were told in affordable housing, that it was the high cost of the underground car park, which is an understandable conclusion. However, we've been told that that wasn't involved in the calculation by the applicant. I'm just wondering where that information was conveyed to you. Is it sort of in minutes or previous application or something? It would just help us to sort of understand where that came from. Thank you.
As I think you understand, this has been going on for a long time. I'm sorry, I can't recall the details, but we have had presentations at the parish council from Lorenzo Penolfi, and I recall, but I'd have to check the minutes, that was what we were told, that there couldn't be affordable housing because of the cost of the car park.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right. So, Councillor Fane.
Thank you. Mr. James, you said that the parish council's view was that car ownership on this site would be higher than the averages. I just wondered why you came to that conclusion, bearing in mind that this site is going to be presumably attractive because it's very close to the Parkway station.
The average is an average across, I believe it's an average across the whole country. South Cambridgeshire is a prosperous area. There are a number of, all the properties are going to have to go for, I would think, above average house price when they're sold. So it's going to, we think that it's likely to be the ownership profile is likely to be a better off group of people, and more likely to own cars.
So that you feel they're more likely to have more cars per dwelling. Okay.
Correct.
Don't see any other questions.
No. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. James. Thank you for waiting for our questions. That's helpful. And we now have our local member, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams, who will also speak has 3 minutes to speak. So if you're ready, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to time myself so I'm used to being brief.
Sorry, can we turn everything off and try and work out what's happening with the sound? I think we've sorted that out now. So, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams, do go ahead.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, thank you. So I'm speaking as local member. Philly was in this one. I mean, I did just want to start by saying I think there's a good degree of frustration locally about this, and there's certainly frustration on my part. The principle of development on this site was established in 2018. Here we are 7 years later. There have been multiple planning applications which have been granted, and yet there are still no houses there. Whittlesford needs houses. Most villages need houses. So there is frustration. There is also a lot of frustration that the planning application, which we thought was settled 2 years ago, it turns out according to the report, the viability did not include the underground parking. I would like to ask why an application went through with a viability assessment that didn't apparently account for an extremely expensive part of the scheme, and why that was presented to the planning committee without apparently that information in there. It is very frustrating, and it has a feel of salami slicing, this. But I want to address my comments mostly towards the parking. There is a very strong view that the parking is inadequate, and I think the committee should be under no doubt that the proposed level of parking does not meet what is in our local plan. Admittedly, it's guidance, but it does not meet it. It is not compliant with the guidance. The result of this proposal and reducing the parking is that there will be flats which have no parking. They will have no parking spaces. There are an inadequate number of parking spaces. And we all know in the real world what's going to happen. They will park all over the road. It's what happens in Clay Farm. It's what happens in Northstowe. We can put planning applications through and convince ourselves that people don't need parking spaces. They do. They will have cars. They will park everywhere. And that is what will happen. But I do want to address the point about the data that's being relied upon here, because I do not feel that that data is reliable. The first thing I would say is that Whittlesford, the data here for the Whittlesford that is being used is based on the Whittlesford ward. The data that is mentioned in the viability report that was just online refers to a reference number for the Whittlesford ward, but that's actually the old Whittlesford ward. It's not the current Whittlesford ward. So if you put in the data that's referred to in that report, the parcel number for data reference, you actually get taken to a map of the old Whittlesford ward, which is not the current Whittlesford ward. It's on the wrong boundaries. It includes Triplow, it includes Heathfield, it includes far more than the village of Whittlesford. The data, to the extent that it is being relied upon, is unrepresentative because there are no flats in Whittlesford. There are about 4 flats, I think, currently in the whole village. The data that you will get for parking for 1- and 2-bed properties relates almost exclusively to retirement properties. There are a number of South Cambs owned retirement bungalows in Whittlesford, and that comprises almost the entirety of the housing stock of 1- and 2-bed houses. People who live in sheltered housing supplied by the district council generally don't have cars. The demographic for this development, as you heard from the developer, is not retirees. It is young families. So
are you drawing to a close?
I am. This data is unreliable.
Okay, we hear what you say. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for Councillor Dr. Richard Williams? Okay. So, do you want to ask a question to the officers, Councillor Heather Williams?
Thank you, Chair. As has been reflected, I think, in all of the speakers, is around this sort of viability assessment. Now, I understand these things are commercially sensitive and the like, and it's not in our report, but it has become quite a big part of our debate. Appreciate it might take a few minutes, but I do feel that as members, we have this question of some saying it's included, some saying it's not. We should really be given the opportunity to have a look at that viability assessment before we go into the debate.
Just to clarify, are you referring to the original one on the permission that's already been determined or the new one on the current permission?
The one that's been referred to. We need to establish for ourselves whether we believe that the basement park was included in that or not, particularly as we have things around affordable housing and we have the parking provisions.
So can I just ask our legal officer to respond to that, please? Just one moment.
So I'm going to ask Rebecca to relay what she's just told. Sorry, can you all hear me? I'm going to ask Rebecca Smith to relay what she's just explained to me, and then we'll take it from there. Sorry, struggling with my microphone today, trying to log out. So on the original viability report, on the original application, I've just done a word search and there is no reference to the basement car park either being included or not included. So if you search basement or if you search car park, there isn't anything that says because of the basement car park we can't do affordable housing, which is what I think the question relates to. On the original one. So there's a viability assessment on the original application that has already been determined. There's a current viability assessment, which obviously doesn't refer to basement car parking because there's no basement car parking proposed on the current application.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, thank you very much, Rebecca. I'm going to ask our legal officer to advise us, please.
Thank you, Chair. What I'm going to suggest is I'd like a 10-minute adjournment. I want to look at those viability assessments. We're not going to disclose them because they'd have to be heavily redacted and we're in a public forum. But I want to just look at the officer and so that we're able to confirm definitively what was in them.
Thank you very much. So it's 11:10. Oh, Councillor Hawkins, do you want to come in before we adjourn?
Thank you. Yes, before we adjourn, just to refer us to paragraph 8.21 in the delegation report for the previous application, where it says a review of the applicant's viability appraisal was undertaken by an independent assessor. The review concluded that a scheme of 100% market housing would produce a surplus of £191,000 against the benchmark land value. And in arriving at this figure, BNP Paribas have accepted some assumptions on a without prejudice basis, although have requested further information in relation to remediation costs and benchmark land value. So it seems to me that there is a bit of a question mark on that viability anyway.
So we're going to have a 10-minute adjournment. It's
yeah, but I just thought I'd bring that to our attention as part of what we need to look at.
So you've referred to 8.21 in the previous viability assessment, or in the previous
committee report.
Previous
committee report. Okay.
The committee report.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so let's take a break. It's pretty much 15:15 now. I'm going to say until 15:30 because I think it's going to take us a bit longer to find everything. Yep, okay, so till 11:30 then, if you could take us offline and if we'll just wait and come back at 15:30. Thank you very much. Right, so we return to the South Cambs Planning Committee and we're looking at the application at Whittlesford, and we've sought some clarification from our legal officer about the viability assessments. Thank you, Vanessa.
Right, thank you everyone. So I've had a look at the initial viability report. I've had a look at the initial viability report, and it's silent on excavation costs and underground car park. Construction costs don't detail whether it's taking that into account or not, but I would like to pass you over to Rebecca Smith, who's going to go back over the minutes from the previous application, because I think they are very important. And just to confirm, I'm looking at the minutes from July 2023, 12th of July, when the previous application was determined at committee. And at that point, committee were informed that the levels of I'll read direct from the minutes if that's okay, the levels of affordable housing were linked to the cost of the development, notably the decontamination costs.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So now, members, we need to look at this application and my concern is that we know that parking is a problem. I mentioned earlier on, members, and I just want to ask you whether you would be minded to agree to a parking management plan, if this were to be approved, a parking management plan for the site. Councillor Handley?
Can I suggest we discuss that if we approve it? You know,
Well, no,
you could spend a lot of time doing that now.
I just wanted to, well, no, because approval includes the things that you've conditioned, so you have to agree what you're agreeing to first. So can I just check, in principle, whether that would be an acceptable condition, Rebecca?
I think it would meet the relevant 6 tests as to whether it's a suitable condition for such an application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams?
Thank you, Chair. And just in the event that it was approved, I'd also like some advice as to whether we can restrict permitted development rights to stop the conversion of the garages, because they are being relied upon and there's already an under provision of parking. So if those garages were then to be converted, which quite often you can do through permitted development rights, that would be a further loss of parking. So that may have happened on the outline, but if we could have clarity and if we could do that, please.
So would that be acceptable, Ms. Christodoulides?
It might be tricky because they're integral garages, so there wouldn't be any works required and there wouldn't be any change of use for them to be used as something other residential. Does that make sense? There aren't any permitted development rights that you can remove because no works would be required. Installation of windows and doors could be removed, but in terms of the actual use, I don't believe there's any permitted development rights that we could remove because they're integral within the building.
Okay, I'll ask one then. Can we restrict the use such that it should not be used as an annex? Habitable rooms? We can't. No? Okay, we can't do that.
We can say that there are no additional windows and doors, because if you want to make the garage a habitable room, then you would need to put windows in and remove the shutters.
I think we've just been advised that they're internal.
No, they're integral as in they're within the built form of the building. So yes, you could remove PD rights for external alterations, windows, doors. That would stop the garage doors being removed. I mean,
okay.
External alterations, windows and doors.
Rights for external alterations.
Installation of windows and doors.
Okay. I think we might be minded to consider that if this is approved. Yes, do you want to?
Design of the garages, they've got windows. So it's the design of the garage got a window. It's got up and over garage door.
No windows.
Yeah, they're inside.
Yeah, I know, but some. Yeah, no windows and that's it. And up and over doors. Looks like an open over, or it could be a, whatever, if you do no windows or doors. Doors could be that. But if you do no external alterations,
Right, so we're working, if this were approved, we're thinking that permitted development rights might be removed in respect of no external alterations, windows and doors. So that's a possibility. Okay, so I think this comes to then, do you want to sum up, Rebecca? We haven't got any further questions on this that I can see. Are we debating? I thought we've, right, okay. Into debate then, if anybody wants to speak. Sorry, yes, do go ahead. Did you want to speak, Councillor Hawkins? Okay, do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, this is, considering the time we spent on this, the car parking is an issue. It's one of concern, and I hear the local member and the parish council. However, in terms of how we make decisions, we have to base our decisions on facts and figures and policies, yes, of course. The data that's been used to justify the reduction in car parking is based on the census figure and is valid. And in those terms, yes, there is a bit more than is expected. But as was pointed out, we live in an area where people tend to have more cars than the expected. But on the basis of what we're looking at now, the space taken up on the ground level, landscape officer has not objected. Yes, there's concern about the potential impact on the ground floor apartments and the hedges and the trees to be planted and biodiversity netting and all that. But then there's a condition that will deal with that. There is no statutory objection. And I'm afraid on that basis, I don't see that as a reason to refuse this application. But of course, I'll be listening to what everybody else says. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hawkins. Councillor Heather Williams. Okay, sorry. Councillor Bill Handley.
Thank you, Chair. This troubles me. I was actually on the committee when we discussed this application previously, and I actually abstained because I was unhappy with the way, with the presentation, not the presentation, the application before. Nothing in this one makes me feel any easier. I do think the parking problems are a substantial one. There may be some, we may have figures that show that it's acceptable, and I respect the officer's decisions on that, but I mean, we're here because we have local knowledge, and we need to take some decisions. Whittlesford Parkway is a parking nightmare. I think the fact, and also I do agree with the parish council's complaint that, you know, the underground parking was used, you know, in actual fact in the minutes it was not the underground parking, it was contamination costs, which reduced the amount of affordable housing. I just don't think this, it just doesn't sit well with me at all. I'm afraid I can't vote for it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Heather Williams.
I think for me that it does come down to the parking. I agree that the biodiversity can be settled by conditions. I think that if there was a viability assessment on the original application, which included an underground car park, and there isn't anything to suggest that's taken out, I think that is where it is. I think we are in a situation where, for whatever reason this has come about, and whatever reason that they want to change the application, be it financial or not, there is a reduction from what was said, and that's, we are looking at a reduction. And it's not one or two. I think it'd been 1 or 2 spaces, that's a different argument, but it's nearly 20 spaces for 48 dwellings. We know that there is an issue in the area. It is not down to the applicant to address the current issues of parking there, but it is for us to establish whether, by giving consent to this, we are creating additional harm on that situation. And for me, the reduction of parking, I believe in this particular area, appreciate the census data and what have you, but we know the situation in the area. We know what things are like for us locally in South Cambridgeshire just as a whole. People do have cars, and people have cars that don't fit in garages as well. So I have very big concerns about relying on internal garaging for resolving parking issues. So when there is a balance, in that obviously houses are needed and there is the train station to give sustainability, but I have not heard anything that alleviates my concern that if we were to give consent for this application, that we would not be triggering and creating a situation that will apply additional harm to an already quite serious parking situation. So I'm making it very clear, it's not because I think the applicant needs to address what's currently happening. I think the problem's there, that they are significantly increasing the harm and impact by reducing the car parking spaces. So in view of that, I will not be supporting the application today.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Sorry, Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. I was also on the Planning Committee when this was considered in July 2023. I understand Councillor Hanley's concerns about this, but we cannot now reconsider that. Of course, we would like to ensure that as much community benefit is secured out of this as possible. But we've heard about the way that the viability was undertaken. The basement car park did not form part of that original viability assessment and is therefore not an option for us to reconsider that now. I would like to see more basement car parking, I'll be frank about it, but I fully understand that in this case there are good reasons why that should be changed, in particular the volume of polluted soil, which is something to be expected when you're developing a brownfield site. As to the volume of car parking, clearly that is a reduction, and it's something that understandably the local community, as represented by the parish council and the local member, are concerned about. But this particular site, being within 5 minutes walk of a parkway station with very good services to London, is likely to attract people who are specifically there because they do not need to travel by car. That might be a risky statement to make, and we have to ensure that we're not imposing an additional problem on the local council. But officers have told us that this is in line with our parking guidance in our local plan. I recognise there is some dispute about that, but that, as I understand it, is what we were told, and I'm prepared to go on that basis. I think it is reasonable to assume, contrary to what the parish council said, that because of the location here, a very sustainable location, there will be less need for people to have cars, something that we as a council have been keen to encourage. I do not see anything in this application that gives us grounds to turn down this proposed amendment to the original application and therefore to turn down the new application. And I think therefore we should approve this section 73. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fain. And Councillor Heather Williams.
I just want to respectfully clarify, and if the officers need to, my understanding is that officers are not saying that the parking provision falls within the guidelines. There's an admission that it doesn't meet the guidelines, but that they don't see that there's an issue with that. So just to be clear, this does not meet our guidelines in our local plan. And also, from my understanding, and I would like that clarified if possible, we are not saying that the underground parking was not included. There's just no evidence whether or not it was included. And I think there's a difference there. So if we could have that clarified.
So I'll refer to Vanessa Blaine for that one. Thank you.
It's silent in the viability report. Can't say, well, I can't say it was, and I can't say it wasn't from what I've read. And I'm happy to come back on the car parking. I think if I can point members to paragraph 10.49 of the committee report, policy TI3 requires 2 spaces per dwelling, of which 1 needs to be within the curtilage. However, the supporting text does say that the developer must provide clear justification for the level and type of parking proposed.
Sorry, where are you?
10.49.
Do you mean 10.49?
Sorry, did I not say 10.49?
Okay, that's fine. Sorry, I thought you said 10.59.
Sorry, 10.49. And officers are satisfied that the dwellings provide 2 the car parking for the dwellings is 2 parking spaces per dwelling, and for the apartments it averages at 1.3 spaces per dwelling, which is in excess of the parking demand from the most recent census data for that area. And so it's not strictly in compliance with the guidelines that are attached to figure 11, but the developer has provided a justification for in officers' opinion, for the level of parking proposed, which has been agreed by the county council.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, so I'm going to sum up, I think, a bit. Sorry, Rebecca, it's your place to sum up, if you would like. Thank you.
We take a view on the potential. There's been an expression of approval and refusal, but the conditions that you requested, can we make sure that those are done ahead of a final vote?
So certainly my recollection was that we asked for a parking management plan for the site. I don't think there was any other condition.
There was.
Oh yes, that's right. The permitted development rights with reference to no alterations to the garages to provide external doors or windows. Okay. Did you want to do the, sorry.
So do you want me to officer recommendation?
Sorry, just before, I'll just make my summary and then I'll come to you. Okay, thank you. So, because I haven't given my view yet, I'll come to you afterwards. Thank you. So my view is that the parish council observed that there was a need for housing. Admittedly, they referred to affordable housing. This is a sustainable site, and my concern is that given that this site was given approval, and this is a change in the parking arrangements, I think if we were to refuse this, I don't think we have sufficient grounds to refuse it. So my feeling is that this is why I asked for the parking management plan, to ensure that parking is managed on site, because it's important that it's provided. And I also asked about management of the green spaces, because that's going to be part of the amenity of the site. So I'm minded to support this. So Rebecca, do you want to give your summary?
Chair, do we not need to agree the additional conditions first? Because some people might not agree with our proposal.
I thought there was a feeling of affirmation, but maybe there's
We
not.
just propose that we include the 2 additional conditions.
So, okay, well, fine, yeah.
Chair, I will formally propose that we insert the 2 additional conditions as set out earlier.
And I'll second for the conditions.
Great, thank you very much.
Is everyone happy with that?
Is everybody happy with those 2 additional conditions? Agreed. No objections? Great, okay, so those conditions would apply if it's voted, if it's approved. Okay, so Rebecca, do you want to go ahead with your summary?
Yep, if I can summarise, officer recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the delegated report, with the addition of the 2 extra conditions that members have voted on relating to a parking management plan and external alterations in relation to the installation of windows and doors. And just to clarify that any approval would also be subject to the legal agreement dated 26th of April 2024.
Vanessa would like to come back in.
To confirm, it's external alterations to the garage.
If the permitted development rights are withdrawn with regard to external windows and doors, if anybody wanted to make an alteration other than that to the garage, they would simply just have to come back to the committee and ask for it, would they not?
They would need planning permission for it. All that it removing PD rights relates to is that people need to apply for planning permission to do it. Unfortunately, I can't just do it to one small bit of a house on one elevation. You'd need to withdraw it for the whole house.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so with those, did you want to seek some clarification? We have a proposal. Well, we'll shortly have a proposal. Did you want to raise a point?
Oh, apologies. Yeah, it was just in relation this proposal to remove the permitted development rights is to protect the parking within the garage. That's right? Is there another mechanism that this could be done with, such as a condition in terms of maintaining the parking in perpetuity or something along those lines? Is that because if that's an allocated parking bay within as the garage, is that would it work that way? It was just a question.
I'm getting sort of no vibes from the officers here. Question is whether it is possible to protect the parking spaces in perpetuity, including the garages.
Yeah, it's a parking space.
I'm going to recommend not, because of enforceability and expediency of enforcing it if it ever came to it. So I think the proposal that's before you now is probably the most pragmatic we could use.
So what we've already proposed should cover that in realistic terms and practicality. So I'm going to propose the recommendation, which is at 11.1 on our agenda report, which is on page 32, which is to approve, subject to the planning conditions as set out below, including the conditions that we have approved earlier, with minor amendments to the conditions as drafted, delegated to officers, and the legal agreement, the S106, dated 26th of April 2024, and a planning application 23/01150/FUL. Could I have a seconder? So,
I would second that proposal, Chair.
thank you very much. So can I take all those in favour, please? Are we doing this by electronic vote, please?
That should be loading now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Has everybody voted? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 in the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, thank you. So that's 4 in favour, 3 objections, no abstentions. So that is carried. Thank you. It's approved. much, members. Right, I'm going to carry on. We've had a break earlier, so we'll come to item 6, members. So, members, item 6 relates to 24/04329/outline for Oakhurst Station Road at Longstanton. And this starts on page 49 of our committee report. It's an application for the proposed demolition of existing B8 storage and distribution buildings and the erection of 2 self-custom-built dwellings. And Melissa Reynolds, our Senior Planning Officer, will present the report. Thank you, Melissa. And we have some amendments, don't we? I expect you'll go through those.
Thank you, Chair. This is application for Oakhurst Station Road in Longstanton. The application seeks outline planning permission for a proposed demolition of an existing B8 and storage distribution building and use on the site, and the erection of 2 self-build/custom build dwellings. The application includes details of the access to the site, which is already there and capable of serving large trucks that currently access the site in relation to the B8 storage use of the site. There are a couple of small corrections to the report which were circulated on the update sheet. First of all, the applicants are relatives of an employee of the council and that relative is also acting as the agent for the application. Erin Coe is here today to speak. And also in relation to the monitoring of the section 106, which would be in the form of a unilateral undertaking, the monitoring fee is not £200, it's £700, and that has been confirmed by our legal officer. So I'll move on to the presentation. Oops. So the application site is located between the settlements of Willingham and Northstowe. It's within walking distance of both. It's got a cycleway along the front of the property that brings you into the village, and to the south of the site you've got the guided busway with the park and ride bus stop, the Longstowe Park and Ride bus stop there. So it is in the countryside, and the site is part of a wider property. Let me just change my pointer, bear me a sec. Tell me if you can't see it, I'm not sure if... so the application property is in here. This is an extract of Google Earth. There's an existing building here, which is a dwelling that was built for the applicant some time ago. There's an extant planning permission in the front part of the site for another self-build property. So the red line actually wraps around those 2 sites. And includes the B8 warehouse at the back of the site here. The remainder of the site is laid to gravel and hard standing, and then this area in here is laid to grass. It's otherwise fairly featureless. It's a flat site. So just to help with the context, because it doesn't really show up on that plan, so you've got the park and ride down here. This is This is Northstowe. You've got Willingham up here. The development framework, I think it comes round this little cul-de-sac. Oh, sorry, I'll stop clicking. And down here. So it is between the 2, but it's in context of a ribbon of development. So there are other houses that front Station Road along this section of Station Road on both sides of the road. So this is the existing plan as I've just described, with the warehouse building at the back and overlaid with the footprint of the extant permitted dwelling at the front of the site. This isn't for approval, but it is an indicative plan to show how the site may be laid out. So of note is that there is this, it is a big site, so there is scope to move the buildings further towards the road and bring development away from the rear part of the site. So this building that's there would go, and the dwellings would be seen more in the context of the existing houses along the southern part of the site and the dwelling that's yet to be built. This is the highways plan. It shows the access as it is, and the highways officers from the County Council have confirmed that this is an acceptable arrangement for the number of dwellings proposed. And this is another technical drawing that would be approved. It's a track path analysis from the transport statement that's submitted with the application. For members who weren't able to visit the site, these are some photos of the property. On the left here, you're looking back towards Station Road. This is the side of the existing dwelling. This picture is looking up the driveway from the Station Road access, so you can see the grass. This is actually where the approved dwelling would go. The dwellings being sought would be a bit further back, adjacent to the other dwelling, Oakhurst. This is a couple of pictures provided by the applicant that show the site in its use in relation to the market business. It is used, has been used until recently for the sale of Christmas trees seasonally, but also the warehouse is used in relation to the applicant's market business, and they store their goods in there, which is what you can see here on the right. Yeah, that's just some more of the same. Just looking at the side of it. So in terms of the planning balance, officers are recommending approval subject to the completion of unilateral undertaking and the planning conditions set out in the report. We're satisfied that it is a reasonably sustainable location. There was a previous appeal in relation to the approved dwelling at the front of the property, in which the inspector concluded that it was in fact a sustainable location. We're satisfied that there's minimal visual harm to the surroundings given the context of what's already there and the built development and the scope for building it towards the road rather than back into the site. It will contribute towards the shortfall that the district has currently in terms of self-build and custom-build dwellings, which carries quite a lot of weight when we balance these, and it will also provide a significant enhancement in biodiversity on the site. Although it's exempt from the statutory requirements, the application does include enhancements under the local plan. We have to note that it's outside of the development framework of Willingham, and Willingham is a minor rural centre, so it has got a reasonable degree of facilities, as does Northstowe and Longstowe. So in terms of access to those facilities that people would need for day-to-day living, we're satisfied, and as I mentioned, the inspector previously was satisfied that it was indeed a sustainable location, so we've given that less weight than we might otherwise have given. As I say, we're recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. So, do members have any questions of clarification for the case officer? No, I can't. Oh, Councillor Fane.
A brief mention there of Northstowe. This is outside the development framework of Willingham, indeed other villages. To what extent is it affected by the special planning documents for Northstowe? Is it designated anywhere there?
Yes, thank you. It is, there is, I don't really know how to describe it. It is within a special policy area in the Northstowe Area Action Plan, which is intending to allow for the future extension of Northstowe. But when I looked into that policy in a bit more detail, there's nothing actually specified for this area of land. The area that's designed for actually building on is the other side of the guided busway to the south. So nothing is actually earmarked for this land. The fact that it's part of a ribbon of development that you know, is already there, would indicate that it's not really actually intended to be part of Northstowe. It's just somehow fallen into the designation when that Northstowe Area Action Plan was drafted. So nothing particular in terms, it wouldn't be harmful to the Northstowe delivery if this site were to be delivered, I think is probably the important point.
It doesn't prejudice anything that would have come. No, okay, thank you very much. Any further questions for the case officer? Can't see any. Okay, thank you. So we'll come on to registered public speaker, which is Aaron Coe. Thank you. You're acting as the agent for the applicant. So I think Aaron's going to enable your microphone to burst into life. So, thank you, Mr. Coe. You've got 3 minutes and we'll give you a warning if you get close to that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. I'd firstly like to thank the officers for the comprehensive committee report and the helpful pre-application service that was provided prior to submitting this outline planning application. The advice provided by officers had a positive impact on the development proposals in front of members today. The planning application received no technical objections from any specialist consultees and no neighbour objections whatsoever. The only comment made against this application has been submitted by Willingham Parish Council, so I'd like to take this opportunity to respond to their concerns. Firstly, the Parish Council are correct in stating the site is outside of the development framework. However, as set out in paragraph 10.17 of the officer's report, the application site is located in a sustainable location in an area which does not have an open, undeveloped rural character, and therefore the proposals would not result in any harm to the character and appearance of the site's surroundings. The application site itself is a brownfield site where an existing built form already exists, and the proposal would involve the removal of the existing warehouse buildings, which would improve the openness within the rear part of the site. Secondly, the Parish Council have raised concern that the approval of this application would set a precedent for future residential development between Willingham and Northstowe. However, as members are aware, any future development proposals on other sites located between Willingham and Northstowe would be assessed on their own merits. The National Planning Policy Framework clearly states that councils should be making as much use as possible of previously developed and brownfield land. This application complies with this requirement. In addition to this, the site is located adjacent to existing and permitted residential development, and the addition of 2 self-built dwellings would have minimal impact on the countryside character. So to conclude, the proposed dwellings would be sustainably located, designed to minimise any visual impact on the countryside. They will deliver biodiversity net gain and contribute to an unmet demand for self-built dwellings within the district. The benefits of the proposed development are therefore considered to outweigh any harm, and planning permission should be granted as recommended by your officers. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coe, for your conciseness. Thank you. Right, so members, do you have any questions for Mr. Coe? No, I don't think there are. So thank you very much, Mr. Coe. Really helpful to hear from you. Thank you. So now, do we have any representative? Councillor Neil Harris from Willingham Parish Council was going to join us on Teams. I can see him on Teams. Mr. Harris, are you there? Can you just turn your camera? Great, okay, thank you. You've got your camera on. Can I just confirm, Mr. James, that you have the authorisation of your parish council to speak on this matter?
Yes, I have. I've sent it to the chairman and chairman of planning, and they both agree with what I'm going to say.
And the parish council has confirmed their
The planning committee, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. James, Mr. Harris, you have 3 minutes to give your presentation, and do hang on afterwards because we might have some questions for you. But we'll warn you if your time, you won't be able to hear it. We'll hear it in the room, but I'll let you know. But if you run close to the time. So do go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Willingham is classified as a minor rural settlement. Its boundaries have changed recently, in particular to the south, where the developer Northstowe, a large development consists of 10,000 residential properties, has split the village of Longstanton, resulting in the northern part now becoming part of Willingham. This application is within that area. The application site is outside of the current Willingham build envelope. The Parish Council has always objected to such development into the rural surroundings of the village. In particular, the separation between the village and the substantial town to the south is seen as an important element in maintaining the unique identity of the rural location of the village. Although this application refers to Oakhurst, it should be viewed in conjunction with the adjacent property Lyndhurst, as much of the site lies behind it. Historically, most of this site was only identified as Lyndhurst, even as recently as 3 years ago. The site itself represents backland development, which the council has always campaigned against. In this case, it would be the third such dwelling away from the highway on this site, following in 2017 the conversion of a garden room behind Lyndhurst created a house at the rear of the existing property. Then in 27 for erection of a self-built dwelling and detached garage following demolition of existing storage buildings. The last of these is already behind adjacent buildings. 2015, an application for a new storage building at the rear of Lyndhurst was approved. This is the building this application is now proposing to replace with these two dwellings. It seems this area has had frequent planning applications to convert storage buildings to dwellings. In 2017, another application for a self-built dwelling and detached garage on the frontage of the site was rejected by SCD planning, but was allowed by the appeal inspector on the basis that it was an infill development in a small cluster of dwellings outside the framework. The inspector considered that it would not encroach further into the countryside due to the existing dwellings on either side. It is important to note that this application for 2 more dwellings to the 4 already constructed or proposed creates a small estate of houses, which sets a precedent for all potential land in this area outside the village of Willingham, an area which speculators have indicated interest in the recent call for sites. Looking at the proposed layout, it also seems to be designed to allow for future extension even further away from the road. If the planning committee are minded to approve this, Willingham Parish Council urge you to consider carefully the implications for future applications in this area. We believe the erosion of the rural division between the village and Northstowe will result in a loss of identity of the character of a minor rural settlement and will become subsumed into Greater Northstowe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Do any members have any questions for Mr. Harris? I can't see any. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now come on to members' debate. So, would anybody like to start? Councillor Dr. Timmy Hawkins? No?
What can I say?
Yes,
I mean,
no?
we have before us an application that makes use of a brownfield site. And in terms of effect on character of the area, I don't see that it makes a big difference. We do have a need. We know we are short of provision of self-built housing. And as we see on the screen above us, the wait is for approval. I'll wait to hear if there's any other opinions to the contrary.
Okay, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams.
Not necessarily to the contrary. I mean, self-build or custom build are the 2 words that I've come to dread, to be quite honest, on planning committee. However, I think we've seen a lot worse, and I do think there has been attempts by the applicant in order to, they've got the plot they've got, right? They can't move the plot. I appreciate what the parish council are saying. A lot of the time, I would completely share the frustrations. And I've, as Councillor Hawkins will know, I've referenced that quite a lot. I actually think that as self and custom builds go, these will be some of the better ones that we've approved. Yeah, we, as we say, we are where we are.
Yeah, thank you. Right, Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, really. In take on board everything that's been said, you know, on policies on custom build. I mean, the last application seems to have been approved on the basis of some sustainability idea. I would just note this is not a sustainable location. It's not ideal that we allow these sort of higgledy-piggledy developments along long roads. I actually delivered leaflets to that in the general election, and that road, there's no pavement. It's not a sustainable location to be allowing development. I appreciate that is not particularly, well, I think the lack of any proper paving up and down that road is a relevant point, but I think policy-wise there's probably nothing we can do. But I share the concern and the frustration to an extent of the parish council of this sort of slightly unplanned development that just happens. But there are already a lot of houses there, so it's difficult to find a reason to refuse it, even though it's not ideal form of development.
Thank you. Councillor Rickson. Oh, sorry, just before you speak, Councillor Rickson, we've got a response from Rebecca Smith. Oh, from Melissa. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify the point about the pavement. It is actually a designated shared surface. It's noted as such in the County Council's mapping, and from my observations on site was in fact used for such. So in terms of accessibility, it is a shared surface. People can cycle on that safely.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Rickson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just was wondering, I was wanted to respond to Councillor Williams' point about it not being sustainable location. Sorry, Councillor Dr. Richard Williams. There we go. I've fallen from that trap, I think, as many others might have done before me.
Sorry, can we just
So
speak
in terms of what grounds he said it wasn't a sustainable location, I was just picking up on that because I cycled along. I cycled to that site from Central Cambridge. I cycled along a shared cycleway from Northstowe up to that site, and the site is within walking distance of the bus stops on the busway. So I just wanted to clarify what made it not sustainable in his eyes.
Okay, yes, so you're making the case that it is sustainable as far as you're concerned. And in fact, I believe there's also a bus stop further north of this site. So, yeah, Rebecca.
Apologies, just to jump in. In paragraphs 10.14 and 10.15 of the report, there's reference to how far away the site is from bus stops and the nearest facilities. And in fact, there's actually an appeal decision on the site, on the wider site, where the inspector noted that it's in proximity to the Long Stanton Park and Ride guided busway, which are within walking or cycling distance along the existing footpath which runs along Station Road, and the nearby villages also provide a number of facilities and shops which could reasonably be accessed by cycle. So the inspectorate have already confirmed or agreed that the site is in a sustainable location.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, Councillor Handley?
I understand Willingham Parish Council's concerns here, but I do struggle to speak against it. I just want to ask the question, Mr. Harris, Councillor Harris, mentioned that this might be setting a precedent for other development on that. And I just wanted to, is there any comment that we can make about that? I suspect, I think that there's no, it does not, but I'd just like you to say that. Councillor
Handley, you know as well as we do that each of our applications come to the Planning Committee and are considered on their own merits.
But it's a point that was made by the Parish Council. I think it deserves being said.
Response.
I'm happy to come back. I think as the applicant's agent pointed out, and even in the MPPF, there's no such thing as a precedent in planning. Each application is assessed on its own merits and it doesn't set a precedent for the next piece of land or the next application.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Rickson.
Thank you. And I just want to have a question. Is there any policy that protects settlements like Willingham from growth of neighbouring settlements in terms of, is there anything sort of set out
I think
requiring
we're talking about
to prevent develop from creeping. I just out of curiosity, because I know that's raised, and I can see.
I don't think that's actually a relevant question. We've already had described to us that this is outside the village development framework, which is what you might be referring to. But the principle is being made that since there is existing residential development there on either side already, that this is a reasonable location as in the view of the officer report. Okay.
No, so because my question was just in general, sort of a wider context of, we've got Northstowe planned, and in the development of Northstowe, from a planning point of view, was there anything?
I thought we'd already covered that, but
I wasn't. And it wasn't stated either way if there was something. I was just curious if there was, and I'm assuming there isn't, but just a question.
Do you want to clarify that? No. Okay. Right. Okay. So my view of this application is it is in a sustainable location given the proximity to public transport. It's not an unreasonable use of the land. It's brownfield site, as Councillor Toomey Hawkins points out, and it says this in the report. It's laid out such that it will not be intrusive on the countryside which it neighbours. And as others have said, that we have seen more worrying applications for self-build. I think this is a reasonable application, and I can see absolutely no reason to refuse it. So I will be voting for this. Minimal visual harm, and I think it's a sustainable location, and I think it's a reasonable application for what is being proposed on the site. So I would like to propose the recommendation. So we need a summary? Sorry, do we want? Sorry. Yeah, can we give a summary from Rebecca first?
Yeah, just to summarise, officer recommendation is for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report, along with a legal agreement with minor amendments delegated to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and that's at paragraph 11 on page 70. So, sorry for jumping the gun there. I'd like to propose this recommendation, and I believe Councillor Hawkins would be happy to second. Yep, thank you very much indeed. So can we take a vote on that, please, members? Erin, can you do the vote?
Thank you, Chair. That's voting now.
So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the room. Okay, so we have 7 in favour and 1 abstention. Thank you very much, members. So that is approved. Thank you. So we move on then to, thank you very much for attending. We move on to item 7, which is aspects of appeal and such like. So do we have, Rebecca, will you be handling this?
Yeah, although I've got about 3 lines to say, which is,
okay.
Please find attached the most recent report on appeals. For once again this month, we actually have more decisions than we have appeals received. So finally, the list is coming down in terms of the extent of appeals where we're waiting on decisions on. If any members got any queries about any particular appeal, then please do give me a shout. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's not so much on appeals, but more on compliance. So I went back through some of the minutes and previous meetings. So we had a report in December and a report in September. And in October, in the minutes, it said that in September we were told that it would go to quarterly reporting, and it was in the report. However, in the September report, there's no reference to that. And I'm just wondering sort of where we're at with that decision. I'm not comfortable with it. I think we should be having a compliance report each month. I think that, I know for myself, I have a lot of enforcement action and things open in my ward, more than I have probably in my 6 years at the moment. So It'd be good to know if that's just I'm a hotspot at the moment or whether that's reflective of the district. And I don't understand the logic of why we're not reporting at each committee as we've always done before and why we're going to quarterly. We've been told that the information, the way it was being managed and the stats and what have you were being put in centralised, so therefore it should make it easier to be able to just pull those figures out, not harder. There could be a legitimate reason for it. I'm just failing to see it at the moment, and I'd like some clarity on it, or perhaps something could be provided in writing, because I appreciate, obviously, compliance aren't here because they're not on the agenda. But I don't think quarterly reporting on something that's so important to our district is adequate for us to be giving proper oversight as a planning committee.
Okay.
You've got me, not compliance, as I head up compliance.
Rebecca will respond, yeah.
It was reported, I will need to go back and find out when it was reported. It was reported before September that moving forwards we would be dealing with it quarterly. I can't remember if it was April, May. I'll need to go back and find the report and also find the minutes as well, but I will come back to you.
It's the logic behind it as well. I say it could be well back, but
it was, and that's in the report as to why it was being done quarterly.
I just think we're not giving proper oversight to compliance, Chair.
So that report will come back to all members, will it?
I can send an email to all members pointing them to which report they were advised it in. It was, I want to say, it could even have been earlier than April. It was prior to the restructure of the compliance team.
What, you mean April 2024? Yeah. Okay, so I think the point would be that if you wish to seek an alteration to that, it would be something that you would bring to planning, or would it be to?
Well, we talked about it in the reply. I think let's allow Rebecca. I think we'll allow Rebecca to look back and pull the information together. That can be brought back to committee, and at the same time, Rebecca and I will have a look at how we then deal with it going forward.
Chair, if we could have it as an item of discussion, maybe.
What I was going to say was, firstly, it depends where we fall in the quarter, but if it's possible to have a report, if that is the end of the quarter, at our next meeting.
It will be at the it's due at the next meeting.
And if we could have some clarification of how that decision was taken about whether it would go to quarterly, so that then it could come back to.
I'll find the report and send it, but you were at risk of telling you what you've already made a decision on. It was part of the report. It was discussed, and I can direct you to which report it was.
Very much. Thank you.
Chair, what I'm saying, the reason I'm raising it now is because the report is at the next meeting, and I'm not saying that a decision wasn't taken or that it's been done in any way. What I'm saying is I think we need to review that as a committee and make an assessment as to whether we think we're giving appropriate oversight on the current arrangements.
Yes. That's fine. We've taken that on board. Okay, thank you. Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point on enforcement again. I don't necessarily expect a detailed answer on this, but we all got an email a few days ago, which was from a member of the public about an enforcement matter. I must admit, having read it, I had sympathy, actually, with the person who was writing to us and the predicament they find themselves in. I feel I know a bit about the frustration of members of the public today. So I think next time we do have an enforcement report, it might be useful if something could be said about the issues that were raised in that email.
Well, I think the.
Yeah, because I've not had anything.
Okay, so that will be looked at by our legal advisor and considered.
The emails to go to enforcement.
Sorry, that has been dealt with, and the person has been advised how best to bring that item to the council. Okay.
I think it would be helpful for Councillor Williams if we read to you what he was told. Would that assist?
That's kind of what I was after,
Yeah,
really.
right. That email went from Democratic Services, and I know because I wrote it. Yeah.
I do know what that email is now.
I'm going to pass you over to Simon Williams, who sent that email out.
Thank you.
Did you want me to explain?
Yes. Thank you. Simon Hill, that would be most helpful. Thank you.
Yes, the normal scheme for...
Sorry, excuse me a sec. Just bear with.
I think it will be explained to members. Okay, thank you.
When we go offline, it will be explained.
If I could just come back to what I was really after was just some reassurance that the person concerned had been advised about the appropriate way to raise the matter.
Exactly so.
And if you can confirm that, then that's really all I was after.
So to reassure you, the person was directed how to address his question to the council.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Which is what I said to begin with. Okay, thank you. Right, so no further questions on appeals? No? Okay, right. So in that case, we'll bring the meeting to a close at 12:31. Thank you very much, members, for your attendance. And do we have the date of the next meeting? And the next meeting is the 12th of March, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much. Would you like to take us offline?